Okay, so we're doing a little impromptu, what I wish I would have known when I graduated a boot camp. When I graduated, I was under the impression this is a software engineering boot camp. Therefore, I must become a software engineer. And with that, honestly, came a lot of stress because I like coding. I think coding's fun. Um, it is something that kind of makes sense to me. There's a struggle, but I like that. But I didn't know if this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Um, And when I graduated, I thought I was sort of pigeonholed, and I know that sounds silly, into being a software developer. And as I left sort of my nonprofit world that I was in, because I was working while I did this, once I left that and I was an instructor for a bit, I actually got into in realizing, wait, I now have a skill that is really transferable to a lot of different arenas, not just being a software developer. Again, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be one, so don't hear that. But what I'm saying is, you don't have to just limit yourself. If you really want to be a dev, be a dev. That's awesome. If you just want to make some money and be, kind of have a stable life, there's other ways to do it other than being a software developer. There are, go to Indeed.com. By just knowing code, you are opening up a ton of different opportunities. Yes, you could be a software developer. And when you look at being a software developer, obviously, you can look at being a software engineer, software developer. Some of those are different in the sense of, some people will be like purists and be an engineer, must know like the scientific kind of architecture stuff where you're engineering optimization from, databases and your codes and your algorithms, whereas developers are just writing the code, kind of putting in features, not caring as much about engineering a faster, more optimal product. But when you're looking, just do software engineer slash developer. They're sort of ambiguous in that regards. So things like Indeed.com is awesome. If you are looking at a job that's remote, um, look to see where they're based. There are 3 states that I know of. I know that there's more, but these are ones that I'm for sure. 3 states that require that company to post their salaries. And so that is Washington State, Colorado, and New York. So if your company is in any of those, or the company you're looking at, they are required by law to post the pay band for that job. Now, sometimes it's not super helpful because like Microsoft will pull this where they say like 81.9 to like 175. That is huge. Usually it's within like $20,000. But so this is kind of how companies, like Apple and stuff are coming back on that. But usually it's not as usually there's a company and they might have like an actual pay band of, here's kind of where we're at and realistically what you can get. So again, software development, software engineer, software developer, all of those you can apply for. There are other roles though. Let's say that you're like, hey, software engineering is cool. But I think that I love people. Like I used to be in sales, right? I'm good at it. I like talking to people. I love talking to people. There's a role called a solutions architect or solutions engineer. Kind of depends on which company you're dealing with, whether it's, I don't know, Amazon, or if you are dealing with Snowflake or whatever, right? These roles are sales roles, but they're not like a sales person. That is a route you can go. You can go to do sales in tech. You can make a whole bunch of money. You'll be able to understand a little bit more of the tech. That's fine. But this is a little bit more of a technical sales role. What a solutions architect does is they go and they partner with a salesperson. Say the salesperson has a customer commit, big customer, or just any sort of customer, right? And they're like, hey, I want to use your product, but here's my use case. How does it work? The salesperson will go to the solution architect or solution engineer and say, hey, can you build this out in our tool? With that, they will go build it out and prove and show, yeah, this is how we can help you. And then they'll take that back to the customer. And then if the customer buys, the solutions architect gets a commission from that. You still get your base salary, but you get a commission from that. Obviously, it varies per company. But what's nice about it is you don't have to do like the cold calling. You don't have to be in the sales funnel. There's no quota you have to necessarily meet. There's probably a quota, but it's not near as stringent as like a just full salesperson. But you can still make a lot of money. Like one of my dearest friends works for Snowflake, which is a big data company. He makes well over $200,000, like probably like 250. This is what he does. He knows a little bit of Python. Like he calls me and says, hey, I'm dealing with this Python issue. What can it do? And it's very basic, like very basic Python. And he knows a little bit of SQL. He gets paid a whole bunch of money. So looking into roles like solutions engineer, solutions architect, those are big roles that can again pay a lot of money. There's a customer success manager, CSMs. One of my other good friends, I have a lot of friends in tech. So if I say, what are my good friends? I'm not just making these people up. CSMs, he makes over $100,000 a year. What they do is they're kind of account managers. And so they see accounts. They're not as technical, but they can kind of help with accounts, right? And say, okay, great. You got our tool. I'm managing our relationship and I'm good with people, right? So maybe that there's something with that and you are still working with a technical product. You just might not be doing the tech itself. Now, one thing to think about when dealing with this is if you enter into a company as one thing, that does not mean you have to stay there, right? When I got hired at Twilio, I was hired as a customer success engineer. So I was a post-sales implementation. So basically, Nike would come to our team and I would get a ticket and they're like, hey, our tool, here's our code. It's not working. The tool we purchased is not working. What are we doing wrong? And I would look at their code and say, okay, great. Based off of your code, here's what you're expecting. Here's why you're getting X, Y, or Z. Here's the fix that you need. So basically I'm just like fixing their code. I can't write their code, but I could fix their code and push them to the documentation to show them what was going on. What's nice about that is Twilio, just like a ton of companies, will often have like a track that you can get on in order to move within the company. So Twilio was, after 12 months of working at that position, you can start the transition process into something new. And so I was on the track to be a software developer there at Twilio within 12 months. And then I had the in, right? So I could already work at the company. I was already working at the company. It's way easier to do an internal hire than an external hire. It's way cheaper as well. I started to meet with people. There's a guy who watched when I was first learning, I can't remember his name, but he does a free code camp video on APIs. And I couldn't understand an API and I watched it and I was like, oh my gosh, it makes sense. And then I looked and he was working at Twilio. And so we just got to talking and then he was like, yeah, I can help you and I'll walk with you through that. And so just getting into a company, right? You can get on the benefits, you get on the pay, all that fun stuff, but you can still transition into a role that maybe you would like. So if you see that there's a CSM role with Apple, let's say, well, if you can get in and do that, yeah, you might take 2 years of working at Apple, doing another job that maybe you don't love. And if you love software engineering, obviously you'd still be coding alongside, but then you can transition into different roles. It's much, much, much easier to transition within a company than it is to just break into a company, which leads me to ways to break in. Meetup is an incredible tool where you can go and look where you're at. So I'm in Mercer Island, which is right by Seattle. And I can say like programming. Now, if you are in the sticks, this isn't going to be as optimal for you. But here in Seattle, like I have maybe software like code. So I'll look up software development. And there are tons of different things for basically what we can do. If I want to jump into an event, intro to AI for developers, starting and building a career in software engineering, These are online. Maybe I want them in person. There's one I go to called Code and Coffee that's like every 3 weeks. And it's just ways that other developers meet up. You get to know other developers, and then they can give you, not if you just ask the first time they meet you, they might not do it. But as you get to know people and start networking, if they've got an opening, they can reach out and they can give, you a link to get into their company, or to at least a referral link. They get paid a lot of money to give a referral. Now it's gone down, but when I was at Twilio, I actually stole one of the old instructors at Coding Dojo, and I got paid $3,000 because he got hired. Just because I gave him a referral. And when you get a referral link, oftentimes there's an ATS, which I think Crystal had showed or put something in Discord of like the ATS checker. But, oh, did I pause there? Okay. There's an ATS sort of checker that can make it to where your resume doesn't go through, but having a referral link kind of automatically gets you to the next, at least the phone call stage. So getting to know people, having people in your corner, that is really, really, really helpful. So start networking, start meeting people, start just going to things. I know it's awkward. I know it's weird. But just that is going to be the biggest and best thing you can do. It is often not what you know. It is all about who you know. And unfortunately, that is true. Doing things on LinkedIn, talking about networking, doing things on LinkedIn does help you. So the more you write, the more you comment. It's so dumb, but their algorithm, the more you sort of put into LinkedIn, when people are looking up jobs, you are more likely, you occur higher. That's like a proven thing. You occur higher on the list when recruiters are looking for software developers in your area. And so that is something that is going to be crucial. That's going to be something that'll be crucial for you, if you want to use or farm LinkedIn to get a job, that kind of thing. Now, don't just put the content that's like super lame because everybody can kind of see it, and there's like a cringy thing of like, oh, I'm getting married today, but I still will code, and everybody's like, just go get married, stop, please. But doing things like this, like New Tech Seattle August meetup, this would be a great thing if somebody's in the Seattle area to go to. September 19th at 8 p.m. Like, this would be a great thing for you to go to. Sometimes they cost money, sometimes they don't. So you get CEOs that will come, and then you can kind of meet. This is by the Amazon building. And you can see a whole bunch of stuff, get to know people, talk to people, build stuff. Very cool stuff. So networking will be something that's going to be huge. Again, you don't have to physically network, though it helps. Virtually networking is still a big deal, right? Still, if you can virtually network, that will help you commenting on things, talking to people, getting to know people, getting a voice out there. My buddy who is a CSM went viral on LinkedIn for something. I don't even remember what, but now he has quite the following because it went viral once, and then recruiters reach out to him all the time looking for jobs. Recruiters from Amazon, from bigger companies are reaching out to him. He's just a CSM. So, there is power in doing that. Now, let's say you get to the point where, and we're going to talk money because that's usually the biggest thing. But let's say you get to a point where you start getting into a job offer, right? Or sorry, an interview process. The way it typically works is your first interview is going to be a phone call. It's just a phone screening. And that's going to be just with the recruiter. Now, the recruiter is on your team. They get paid if you get hired, honestly. So they want you to be hired, right? They want to advocate for you. That said, it's a fine line of, if they hire you for less money, that's also an incentive. So they're not trying to drive your money down, but if they can get you for $110,000, but the budget was for 115, that's also a good thing on their end, right? Now, do I know if they get a portion of whatever they save? No, I don't know that. But they, so they're playing both sides, right? Because they want that company to want to use them again because they can bring in good talent for a little bit less money, that kind of thing. So the first meeting might say, and typically this is always in the recruiter call, is they're going to ask you, and this might be one of the most important things I say in this class. They're going to ask you, what is your pay range you're looking for? And my encouragement is don't answer. Do not answer on the first call ever. Never, 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 ever answer on the first call. The reason is because you don't understand the company yet. You don't understand the company structure. You don't understand if you would even like this job. You don't understand a lot of stuff, right? And the second thing is you don't understand, maybe you've done some research on the company, but you don't understand what the role is entailing. Therefore, if you don't understand what the role is entailing, you don't understand what the pay band is. So the most optimal way, and I've had students, Austin, great question. I was just about to say, this is what I encourage students to say instead. When they say, hey, Will, think you'd be a great fit, love for you to move forward. That said, I was just kind of curious, what are your salary expectations for this role? And I think you can do this for any role. It's not just tech. But the way to kind of respond to this is, hey, Edwin, let's say Edwin's my recruiter. Hey, Edwin, really excited to move forward. That sounds great. That said, when it comes to compensation, I know that there's a lot of moving parts where there's benefits and certain things certain companies do. And, transparently, I feel like I'd be doing a disservice or just throwing out a number because I don't have a full grasp of what the role entails in your total compensation package. So do you mind if we address that kind of down this path, down the road? Now, they're not going to fight you typically on that. If they do push back and say, hey, you know what, I'd love to get you an answer. I'd love to think about it. Can you give me 24 hours? That said, and kind of put it back on them. Do you happen to know the pay band for this role? Because each company has different levels. Or again, I'm talking about sort of major companies. They'll have different levels. So you'll have like an L1, an L2, an L3, and L4, right? And so maybe you're applying for an L2 role. Well, they have a set pay band for L2s, right? And so if you come back and say, hey, again, I'd like to think about it. I'd like to get a little bit more information just on the total compensation package. At this time though, do you understand or do you have or know what the pay band is? That is going to be crucial information. Because also we used to have a TA. I used to have a TA. She ruled. Her name was Justina, and I had given this speech for the first time she had heard it. Because I kind of did it sort of later into my career when I came back to teaching. And she actually had an interview like that week and did the same thing. And she was going to say a number that was like $20,000 or $30,000 less than what they came back and offered her. So if she would have done that, they're going to be like, cool, we can get you for dirt cheap, right? And she was like, oh, that's great. I've hired people where I thought that they were going to, I threw out a number and they're always expecting you to counter at least one time. If you try to counter like twice, that's going to be an issue unless it's really something you're firm with. But they're expecting a counter. So like I've hired people where I'm like, okay, I'm going to offer you this. You're going to counter with this in my mind. And I've talked with bosses, they're going to probably counter with something like this. And I think this is an accurate number. They're like, yeah, that's great. And then they just didn't counter. And so he lost out on $5,000 annually because he didn't counter. Then after I hired him, I was like, hey man, just a heads up. I was going to pay you this. You got to counter. And then we advocated after a year and I got him, that plus his normal salary to kind of get him back to where he was. But they're going to want you to counter. Before we get started with class, I will show you a very cool tool that you guys can look at. Again, we'll talk more about this on Tuesday, but this is called Levels FYI. It's a really great tool, and this is where people put up their salaries. Again, it's to get you more of an understanding about compensation. So I saw in the chat, what about on the application and expectations form? Well, what Levels FYI does is it has people submit their salaries, and you can go into salaries by location. I'm in Seattle. I'm in the Seattle area. And I can see that the total median total comp is $231,000, 231,500, right? That's just the median for people who have been a developer for a while. Now, if you were talking entry level, it's very different. It's 174. And total comp does not mean you're getting paid $174,000, not even close. If we were to look at this, remind me later, you can see that here's the total compensation, 175. We'll break this down on Tuesday, but they are getting bonuses. But really, so like for this one, this Microsoft person has a base salary of 122. Even though their total comp is 178, their salary is 122. So there's $50,000 of compensation happening via stock and bonus. And when you're dealing with stock, there's something called a vesting schedule. So even though you're getting, you are getting $25,000 a year, but it's kind of not true because you have to vest it and it's not really, there's tax involved and stuff like that. That's what we'll talk about on Tuesday, vesting schedules, equity, options, all of that stuff. But if you're looking and saying, okay, well, what, and they got a, signing bonus of $30,000 spread out over 2 years. Companies love to spread out their pay over multiple years because the average spot at a job in tech is 18 months. So they can offer you, $75,000 knowing the odds are you're not going to be there. Just the blunt statements. Amazon is the worst at it. They will go heavy in their equity. Let me try to find one that's actually broken out. They only do 5% as their first, they do 5% their first year. And then you see the last 2 years, it's 40% of your total equity they give you, RSUs, residual stock units, because you're not going to be there. Just the odds are. So they're saving 80% of what the compensation they're giving you, 80% of that, they're likely not going to have to pay you. So of course they're going to give you these wild numbers. Not to say that Amazon's bad. It just is, it depends on, what org you get or, whatever. And that's people's, kind of, I would love to work at Amazon. So there's nothing wrong with that. Just, we'll dive into this, on Tuesday, but more so, I just wanted to show you and kind of start the conversation of look at all these different jobs you can do. Solution architect, which is what I was talking about. The median income's 200K. If I were to go into Seattle, 218. There's tons of different roles. There's program managers, product managers, project managers, that you can dive into. Product designer, product managers make a boatload of money. So there's technical product managers or product managers. I've got friends who are product managers. They make a whole bunch of money. Really, they are just keeping everybody in taps. Like, they are keeping everybody like, hey, are you doing your job? Are you doing your job? Is marketing doing their job? Cool, great. That's like what a product manager does. And they make a lot of money. And yeah, Austin, 262. I had a friend, friend's probably a strong word. He was like building a product that when I came out of the boot camp, I like joined in and was helping him build and then doing other things with. Anyways, he was a product manager for Peloton and he made over $400,000 a year, which is insane. Yeah. The 90th percentile make over $500,000. It's nuts when you get into that. So again, I want you guys to think through, and something that Dontrell probably was alluding to is there's a ton of different things just because now you have the skill of understanding databases and understanding technical things, and you can technically think. There's a whole bunch of things. The only one I'd probably say is maybe not technical writer, because with AI coming, people are shoving all their stuff and AI is writing it. That's just the only one. You can do whatever you want. But that's just something I would maybe think away from. But if you get a great opportunity, again, you can have that for a year, move into something new. So cool. I'm going to stop that there because we have class, but I see, okay. Is the solutions architect entry level accessible, or will I have to fluff up my confidence? That one sounds like the bee's knees. Nope, it is entry level. If you know, like my job for Twilio was entry level. And I got paid. I'll talk about my pay in like I'll go way more in depth on Tuesday. I'm super transparent about pay. I don't really care. I got paid $108,000 a year at Twilio. Not that was my base salary. That wasn't my equity or any of my other compensation things. And all I had to do was like write a function that took in query parameters. There's these things called UTM parameters that you can pass through, which are like if there's a marketing campaign or if there's some sort of campaign, you can say, oh, this, Google Analytics uses it to say like, oh, that's how A/B testing works in marketing, at least for emails, is like when they click on a link, there's like a UTM parameter. And so, okay, when they visited the site, it's because of email B. We had 500 from email B and 200 from email A. Email B was more effective, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that was all I really had to do. It was not a challenging it was a take-home test. It was not challenging, but we'll talk more about the interview process on Tuesday. But again, open up your horizons, start applying now. Do not wait. Open up your horizons. There's sales engineers, post-sales implementation, CSMs, solutions architect, project managers, project program managers, product managers, technical writer. Like there's a whole bunch of things. So you don't just have to be a developer. That doesn't mean you can't be. But there's a million things you can get into that if you wanted to, you can keep on diving into those. So cool. Tuesday for signing bonus. Yeah. We'll do that.